ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनी अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। After a break of 2 months or more, we have gathered again, this morning going by India's time, Wednesday, October 4, 2023. And for some of you in the West, Tuesday evening, October 3. And we are resuming our study of the Bhagavad Geetā. Before we left for a break, we had completed 6 chapters of this magnificent spiritual classic, and accordingly, in this session, we are going to pick up the 7th chapter, Saptamaha Adhyaya, called Jnana Vijnana Yoga. Jnana is knowledge at a certain level, and Vijnana is the same knowledge taken to a more profound level, to the extent of the student intimately understanding the truth of the scriptures. Sri Krishna promises Arjuna right in the beginning, I'll tell you Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam. And what is more, Bhagavan Sri Krishna, as he says this in the very second shloka of this Adhyaya, which has 30 shlokas, where all the 30 are spoken by Sri Krishna himself. Sri Krishna says, upon knowing this wisdom, which I shall share with you now, you will not have anything else that needs to be known. These are one of the dozens, if not more, instances, one of the many instances in the Bhagavad Gita where we can see a distinct flavor, an echo, in fact, of what is said in the Upanishads. In the Mundaka Upanishad, as all of you know, the student himself asks the teacher, Angirasa, is asked by Shaunaka, is there something knowing which everything is known? Kasminnu bhagavo vidnate sarvamidam vidnatam bhavati iti. And then the teacher Angirasa affirmatively goes about instructing Shaunaka. Likewise, the second shloka of the 7th chapter declares, Yajnatva na iha bhuyaha anyat nathavyam avashishyate. There is nothing that remains to be known. That means you realize your own completeness. I am fine, I am okay, I am complete, I don't need to get anything, get anywhere. That kind of self-sufficiency in a spiritual sense. And then it doesn't mean anybody sits idle. One then goes about life not out of insecurity or some baggage of old desires, old vasanas, old tendencies, some unfinished business of life, etc. All of them will have little significance. Now, the lady or man who gains this wisdom goes about life out of love, out of compassion, out of a certain appreciation of God and His creation. This seventh chapter is regarded as the forerunner of a set of 6 chapters that especially highlight the glory of God. Certain scholars have rightly said that broadly speaking, the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita highlight Tvam Pada of the Mahavakya Tattvam Asi. In the Mahavakya Tattvam Asi, Tvam stands for you and me, the students, the seekers. Tvam is the Shishya in that setting of the Gurukula, where the teacher tells the Shishya, Acharya says to the Shishya, Tattvam Asi, that thou art. So thou represents the student, the recipient of the highest wisdom, and in the first 6 chapters, pretty much the highlight is the seeker, Arjuna's grief, the turmoil, the conflicts and confusions he goes through. And Lord Krishna's instructions are also predominantly on how Arjuna may do sadhana. Turn to Nishkama Karma. Let go of Sakama Karma. Let go of action where it is all about me and my. Go for such work, such action, such service where it is others. A 3-minute video is doing the rounds now, much appreciated and admired by one and all. And that 3 minutes video is not by some Swamiji or some Harikathakar or some professor of philosophy in any college or university, but Ravi Venkateshan, the former country head of Microsoft in India, head of Cummins, and a very senior, highly successful executive of the corporate world, who almost reached the top of Microsoft. And this Ravi Venkateshan speaks tips on happiness. He gives certain tips on happiness, sharing his own story, his own journey. He confesses that from childhood onwards, he actually came under the impression that he had to run faster, work harder, achieve goals, bring trophies, and that's how people will admire and appreciate him. That's how he would be happy. So for him, like it is for most of us, happiness is about impressing the society, impressing the world around, and getting their applause, etc., reaching certain high level of wealth or fame, etc. Then it occurred to him, it's amazing that a former corporate icon speaks the language of Bhagavad Gita without referring to the Gita. He says, it dawned on me one fine morning that this is an endless race. How long should I keep running to get trophies or medals and so on. And he then studies. In that 3 minutes video, he says, Ravi Venkateshan says, I studied a lot of religious works. I remember having received him in the beautiful campus of Krishnamurti Foundation, India, some 10 years ago. Ranjini Manian brought him to the Vasanta Vihar. He was still holding some very high position in the corporate world, but he spent some time and we took him to the library of J. Krishnamurti, and I even recommended and gifted him a book. And he was showing interest. No wonder, 10 years down the road, today in that video, he says, I read a lot of religious philosophies and went into counseling, examined, thought, pondered, studied this matter of happiness. And then among the 3 or 4 points he says about what he found out, and quite presumably he found peace too, to a great extent, if not to the full extent. He shares with the listeners of that video. Probably that was a clip from a talk he delivered at some prestigious platform. I am not surprised if he is invited by IIMs and ISB and even universities abroad and so on. He is such a distinguished person from India. So he says, among other things, I realized that happiness increases when we think less of ourselves and when we think more of others. I wonder whether Ramana Maharshi inspired him or Sri Krishna inspired him or J. Krishnamurti made an impact on him. Where he got this doesn't matter, but he says, more we think of oneself, that is where happiness reduces. Think less of yourself, think more of others. So, Sri Krishna said that, Karmani adhikaraste, Arjuna, do and so on. Work with a spirit of service, spirit of sacrifice. So the advice is so much on what Arjuna should do, and through Arjuna, what you and I should do. And first of all, it addresses the situation of our life, keeping in mind how we see ourselves now. Arjuna saw himself a Kshatriya, a prince, a Pandava, somebody to whom a great injustice had been done by Duryodhana and other Kauravas. You and I also see ourselves in a certain way. We have a certain image of where we are, where we need to reach, how we should reach there. We are very eager to get tips and guidance on such possible journey. That is Tvam But the Vedanta says this Tvam, literally you, but it becomes for the seeker I. I have a sense of who I am, can be inquired into. Either inquire or surrender. The chapters 7 to 12 especially highlight the path of surrender. In order that we may surrender to God, we must first have a certain proper appreciation of God's glory. Who this God is, where he is to be found. Is he outside or is he inside? Is he on top of Himalayan peaks or is he at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean? All these questions come to us. Alas, a large number of people in this world hastily conclude there is no God. There is no God at all, and we must only concern ourselves with providing food, shelter, clothes, and such things to everybody, and so on. So they deny God. However, the truth is there is God. God is running the show, and chapters 7 through 12. 6 chapters provide to us valuable information, guidance, insights, and inspiration on God. Sri Krishna himself says, he as though knew that even in our times, the 21st century, there would be a lot of non-believers and a small number only truly believe in God. Out of thousands and thousands of human beings, one rare individual turns towards God. And among thousands and thousands of such people who turn towards God, one rare woman or man knows me, he says in the third shloka itself, out of the 30 to be found in this chapter. And then gets down to the main business on hand in this chapter, telling Arjuna who he is, who Sri Krishna is, who God is. And he makes it clear, as we often say, really speaking, a student who is very sincere, who is totally open to spiritual instruction, doesn't even have to read the entire Gita. There was a student who would try to read Gita, and in the first chapter itself, when the verse describing the arrival of Madhava and Pandava, Sri Krishna and Arjuna was announced. The shloka where it is announced, Ata Shvetair Hair Yukte Mahati Syandane Stithau Madhava Pandavaschaiva. It shloka says Keshava and Arjuna, they come in a horse which had white horses pulling it. Looking at that, reading that, the Krishna Bhakta, it is said, had tears rolling down his cheeks. Sri Krishna's glory, all the more described in Srimad Bhagavatam. And day before yesterday, permit me to share with you, and I guess it will be of value to you too. Day before yesterday in Chennai, I was so fortunate to sit for 2.5 hours and watch a ballet, dance drama, Nritya Nataka on a work which was composed in Kerala some centuries ago in Sanskrit, Narayaniyam. And this Narayaniyam in 100 chapters, each having only 10 shlokas, therefore 1000 shlokas, that's all. While the original Bhagavatam has 18,000 shlokas, Narayaniyam is only in 1000 shlokas. Narayana Bhattatari, a great Sanskrit scholar of Kerala, who was attacked by paralysis. He got paralyzed. There is some background for it. That's a different story. He sits at the entrance. Every day comes and sits at the entrance, unable to move swiftly, unable to get up properly, unable to stand and walk properly. Either somebody would bring him, or maybe he crawled to the managed to come there, and then sitting there whole day, he wrote this Narayaniyam. And a wonderful speaker on Bhagavatam and other works these days, Sri Dushyant Sridhar, conceived this whole idea of a dance ballet on Narayaniyam. and a wonderful lady choreographer called Anita Guha, and then very able, very competent, highly skilled musicians and those who made dress, those who made the stage, you know, it's a mega project. So this Agre Pashyami, that's the name of the show. And I mention it not because it connects here, it does, of course, but I'm also urging if any of you get a chance in India or abroad to watch this 3 hours totally, because there's a function in the beginning and all that. But the actual program is about 2.5 hours, the dance ballet. So the story of Srimad Bhagavatam, the background story of Narayana Bhattatiri, and many associated matters. Selectively, they have presented 5 out of the 10 avatars of Lord Vishnu are covered in this presentation, and not restricting themselves to only the Sanskrit shlokas of Narayaniyam. The producers, the directors have taken the liberty of putting in some songs from the Vedas, Vedic hymns, some songs from Kannada and Tamil, Telugu and Hindi and other languages, wherever it is appropriate. Sanskrit compositions by some others also, so that the presentation becomes all the more effective. I sat there transfixed, and I said to people who took me there, all my life I have not seen such a wonderful cultural program as this evening. So, Mahavishnu, as Sri Krishna, is an unbelievably great expression of divinity. By the way, Narayaniyam especially adores, admires, and praises Sri Krishna as Guru Ayurappan. As you know, there is this Guru Ayuru. Vayu means Pavana. Therefore, Guru Ayur in Sanskrit is called Guru Pavanapura. So, Pavanapura Pate, they say, for Sri Krishna there. Sri Krishna himself. The same Sri Krishna who in Tirupati is called Venkateshwara or Balaji, and Mathura Vrindavan, Sri Krishna himself, as Srinathji in Nathdwara. Many are his names. So, Narayaniyam especially focuses on Sri Krishna. And Sri Krishna in the 7th chapter tells Arjuna, this is where you hear it from the horse's mouth, as they say. He says who he is. So, Krishna's glory. All this universe is no different from me. This is my apara prakriti, says Sri Krishna. The earth, water, fire, air, space, and mind, intellect, ego. And by mentioning 8 of them, he implies everything that is known, knowable in this universe, in this cosmos, in this creation, in our existence is my lower nature. And then I have a higher nature that is the very pure consciousness principle. By the way, I wish to make one last reference. The whole dance ballet, which is going to different cities, if it comes to your city, don't miss it. At the end, Sri Dushyant Sridhar announced that the next one is going to be in New Delhi, December 4, Kamani Auditorium, very well-known auditorium in Delhi. They are going to present it. Already they have done at Bangalore and 3 times in Chennai and once in Mumbai, I guess. I don't know when they did in Mumbai. I missed it. So they have done a few times. Don't miss it. Now, what I want to refer once more, make one more reference is, why is it called Agre Pashyam? Some of you have been studying Narayaniyam. I know Narayaniyam is very popular. Everybody studies it, especially South Indians, especially people from Kerala and so on. Not far from where I live in Mumbai, there is a Krishna temple, Guruvayurappan temple, and I'm sure hundreds or if not thousand, study Narayaniyam regularly over there because Guruvayurappa then brings Narayaniyam. Agre Pashyami. So Agre Pashyami literally means I see in front of me. Narayana Bhattatiri, to whom I made a reference as the author, who actually was paralyzed. And he begs of Sri Krishna's mercy to cure him, and more than that, to give him unflinching devotion. Sits at the porch. Today, if you go to Guruvayur Sri Krishna temple, they show this is the spot where Narayana Bhattatiri had sat. I don't know for how many days or how many months. This is where he sat and composed Sriman Narayaniyam. At the end of his composition, he gets completely cured. As he composes more and more, he finds changes, finds improvement. And at the end, he is completely freed of all that, whatever you call in medical language. Popularly, we call it the paralysis. The body is not able to function properly. He becomes fully functional and he sees, he beholds Sri Krishna in front of him. Agre Pashyami. So the last verse of that 1,000 verses composition begins with the two words, Agre Pashyami. I see in front of me, O Lord, with incomparable effulgence. You are merciful, and so on, praising the Lord and sharing his joy with the readers of beholding Bhagavan through the composition at other places also, 2 or 3 places. For example, when he was referring to Vishwarupa Darshana, Narayana Bhattatiri had glimpses of the Vishwarupa as he looked at the idol of Sri Krishna, Guruvayurappan. He could see the Vishwarupa over there. So multiple times he gets visions with the climax happening at the time he was writing the last shloka. So this 7th chapter is going to be a treat for us, whether we are devotees of Vishnu or Shiva, Devi or Ganesha, Surya or any other form of that one divinity whom we call God. This shlok, this chapter 7, Saptamaha Adhyayaha, will usher us in to much greater understanding of God than ever before. So, some number of verses here are devoted, to give you a quick introduction, to show how God is in everything as the very essence in them, as the essence that supports that entity. And very poetic, very picturesque in the description. I am the light in sun and moon. I am Om in the Vedas. I am the heroism in heroic people. I am the energy in fire. I am the tapas in tapasvis. Those who are performing austerities, imagine if you take away austerity from them, then they may have the dress of an tapasvi, or they may have long hair and so on, outer marks. But if there is no true austerity in them, inside them, they are gone. So Sri Krishna says, I am the tapas in the tapasvis, and so on. I am strength, I am desire in people. But such desire that is not opposed to dharma. Wonderful punchlines. Dharma viruddho bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshava. Kamaha asmi, I am kama, but there is an adjective. Dharmena aviruddha. And there are verses which prompt great meditation. All that is sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic come from me and return to me, he says. That can be a Vedantic meditation also. For it is from that ultimate truth, Brahma, Satchit, that Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas emerge, into which all of them return. It is in this chapter, in the verse 14, that you find Sri Krishna explicitly mentioning Maya. Maya is the essential error in perception. You and I are caught in an error, and all that Vedanta does is remove that error. Maya makes people sink in worldliness, but when they submit to God's will, God removes that Maya. There are many verses from this chapter that are quoted by scholars in various contexts while they are teaching other texts also. And one of them is how Sri Krishna mentions that devotees are of four kinds. Chaturvidha bhajante mam jana sukritinurjuna arto jidnasurartharthi nani cha bharatarshava. There are four kinds of devotees. Some reach God when they are going through some very hard times. Later they forget. Earlier they had not thought of God. They are also, when they are whatever, when they are worshipping God, they are quite sincere. So in his broad-mindedness, God gives them a place in the fourfold classification. Some are interested in gaining more and more scriptural knowledge, and they seek that. They pray, God, make me adept in the four Vedas, in Bhagavatam, in Upanishads, in Brahma Sutras, whatever. So they are Jidnasus. Then there are Artharthi, that may be the largest number. Lot of people pray God, and all that they want is wealth. More and more wealth. Fine, Sri Krishna says, no problem. If you don't ask me, whom else will you ask? I am the giver of everything you want. I can give you A to Z. So, but then the one that stands apart is Jnani. Artha, Jidnasu, Artharthi. Then the fourth one is Jnani. This Jnani doesn't ask for anything at all. If at all there is anything that he asks for, it is love of God. Give me more love. Like Prahlada says to plays to Narasimha. After Narasimha finishes off Hiranyakashipu, Prahlada sings praise of Narasimha, and one of the things he says is, very much like people in the world are never tired of seeking sense pleasures, money and power and so on. Lord, bless me very much like them. I should be never tired of seeking you. My desire to be with you, to worship your lotus feet, my love for you should never cease, leave alone, never even reduce by an iota. Ya priti ravivekana vishayeshu anapayini. Tvam anusmarata sami hridayat mapasarpatu. Swami Vidyaranya quotes it in Panchadashi. That is how I know. I have not studied Bhagavatam. But the verse from Bhagavatam where Prahlada says that Preeti, that love for you, which is in my heart, should never decrease, should never go away. And that is my prayer to you. Prahlada doesn't ask for anything at all. Like Prahlada, time to time there are always been Gnani Bhaktas in this world. Sri Krishna praises them. And the chapter slowly draws to a close when Sri Krishna talks about how, depending on how you approach God, with what maturity, being well informed or ill informed or not informed, how you look at God, depending on that will be the returns. You go to a wonderful, huge pond of drinkable water, but if you go with a small vessel, that's what you collect. You go with a large vessel, 10 of you, 100 of you go with buckets and fill them, you get so much more. The pond is giving, and that is how Sri Krishna says, I am a giver. Take as much as you want. Therefore, go to teachers, get better understanding of this matter called God. Understand God rightly, develop love for God, then see how everything changes. Bhagavad Gita, we have always said, has its own insights into psychology, human psychology. While Bhagavad Gita primarily awakens us into spiritual wisdom, secondarily, there is enough material on leadership, on communication, on literature, on friendship, on human values, and on psychology also. In this chapter of 30 verses, in this 27th, Bhagavan Sri Krishna says, look, from the time of birth itself, everybody has ragadvesha, ichchadvesha. It's a dvandva moha. Moha means delusion. Moha means wrong judgments, misplaced love, misplaced compassion, misplaced fear, misplaced concern, misplaced emotions. You don't love that which needs to be loved or those who deserve to be loved, and you are going after somebody else who is not worth pursuing. Moha. And Sri Krishna talks about Dvandva Moha. Dvandva means pairs. So, in summary, this Dvandva Moha consists of number one, being attracted to places, persons, or objects where you should not be. Number two, not being attracted to places, persons, and objects where you should be. You like where you should not like, and where you hate where you should not hate. You should not be angry with ABC. You should not grind your teeth against X, Y, or Z, but you are doing it day in and day out. And then some other place, you should not be so attached to people or places or objects, but you are unable to take that out of your mind. And Sri Krishna says, Sarge. Sarge in this verse 27 can mean at the time of birth of individuals like you and me. Or Sarga is Srishti. right at the beginning of this creation, alas, all who are created have brought with them Purva Sanskaras. But at the time of creation, what Purva Samskaras can be there, you may ask? Well, in Sanatana Dharma, creation is never a first time affair. There were cycles of creation before too. And the souls that are born at the time of this cycle of creation have come from the past cycle. In between, they went into deep slumber. They went into the unmanifest. In this cycle of creation, they rise, and hopefully a good percentage among them get liberated in this cycle. But then many more are part of the show. So Sarge can mean at the beginning of this cycle of creation, consisting of Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Kali Yuga. So there are some theories about this whole cycle of creation. So right at the beginning, or take it simple, make it simple in our life. It's not true that all children are born with a pure divine mind and parents spoil it or the neighbors spoil it or the school spoils it. No, no. The moment a child is born, let's say there are 3 children of the same mother. The moment they are born, they have got their own baggage. They have their own likes and dislikes. They have their own prejudices, their own bias, their own inclinations. They have their own tendencies, vasanas. This is what Sri Krishna says. And they may not express, these vasanas may not express for a while. So children look so divine when they are 1 year old, 2 year old. But the moment they become 4, 5, 6, 7, another side of theirs starts expressing. It was there in them from the birth itself. So this psychological truth that people think differently, people have different tendencies, different natures. They have various combinations of sattva, rajas and tamas. As Vivekananda would put it, everybody is potentially equal. Potentially everyone can rise to the same heights where Madhva, Ramanuja, Shankara and all those saints went. Potentially everyone is equal. But at a given point of time, individuals, groups of people, communities, by and large, broadly speaking, have their predominant characteristics. Modern genetics may explain it in its own way. Modern science may have its own way to look at it, focusing more on brain, on genes, on DNA, and this and that. But the philosophy of Sanatana Dharma talks about a subtle body, Sukshma Sharira. The Sukshma Sharira, which comes in and occupies a Sthula Sharira, a gross body, the embryo in a mother's womb, then begins to function in the gross body, maybe for 100 years. At the time of death, the gross body is left behind to be burnt or to be buried or to be kept on top of a tower for birds to, vultures to come and feed on those bodies, as in some religions they do. Or as it happens sometimes in some accident, somebody dies on a desert, vultures eat on that body. Gross body dies, but the subtle body, as Viveka Chudamani would put it, 5 sense organs, 5 organs of action, 5 pranas, mind and intellect. 17 factors constitute the subtle body, and that doesn't die. That goes to its next life. Mind and intellect, manaha and buddhi are part of it. That is called jivatma. That is the transmigrating soul. That is the sansari atma. Don't mix it with the shuddha atma that Upanishads talk about. The same word atma is used for the truth that is never born, that never dies, no, that is not touched by any impurity whatsoever, that is way above likes and dislikes, that is way above vasanas or samskaras or you name it. Upanishads talk about the Shuddha Atma. That doesn't have mind, intellect, etc. associated with it. It is ever unassociated. But Jivatma, also called Atma, but it is Sansari Atma, Jivatma, conditioned soul. Upanishads are not focusing on it. That is Karma Kanda. That Atma has likes and dislikes, Ichcha and Dvesha, and so on. This beautiful chapter concludes with Sri Krishna, maybe deliberately, if not mischievously, instilling in Arjuna's mind 7 questions. They are rightly called Prashna Bija. He sows in the mind of Arjuna seeds, and those seeds, Bija, become questions. They sprout, they become questions. Sapta Prashna Bijan. Sri Krishna puts 7 Prashna Bija, seeds of questions. No wonder the next chapter, 8, begins with Arjuna speaking. Kim tad brahma, kim adhyatmam, kim karma purushottama, and so on. Kim. 7 questions he asks. The seeds for those 7 questions are sown at the end of the 7th chapter. Jnana Vijnana Yoga can once more meaning like other chapters, can be a transformative experience if you and I sincerely study it with an open mind, study it receptively, study it with some devotion, study it after some upasana, live daily life with as much alertness as possible. Don't mess up your relations, don't mess up your mornings or evenings, don't do things by which you are already in a bad mood, and then you study Gita, the mind won't be able to pay attention. Reduce self-contradictory actions on your part, words on your part. Love all, don't hurt anybody. Then the same shlokas of Bhagavad Gita can work on you in amazing ways. We'll begin the shlokas next Wednesday morning India, Tuesday evening in the West. Also we will enter Shānkara Bhāshya in the next class. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.